Good afternoon and welcome to this ECB focus session. Today's topic is the Eurosystem's work on wholesale central bank money. My name is Aileen and I'm here with a great team of ECB colleagues, and we will try to support you today on this session. We'll talk you through the topic, answer your question, and support you on anything we can on this webinar. It is Friday afternoon, so we are delighted that so many of you have decided to join us today. There will be a lot of people in the webinar today, but we will accommodate you as good as possible. Before we get started on the actual program, we just want to run you through a few practical information before we get started. So as you can see on the screen, we will be live streaming the whole event. This means that you can either watch the live stream directly, and the way to do that is just, take your phone, scan the QR code, and immediately you will be viewing the live stream. Some of you are already in the Teams webinar. Even if you're in the Teams webinar, I would advise you to just have a browser open with the live stream in case you run into trouble later. So you can always move to the live stream as a backup. Then please also note upfront here that we will be recording. So everything is recorded and we will publish all the videos after on the ECB website. Yeah. So that's a bit on that, and a few more practical information before we really drill into it here. In order to facilitate that the quality of the event is as good as possible, you're all muted, and we will not be able to take any questions. You can't unmute yourself and speak. But of course, that doesn't mean that we're not taking questions, because we know that you are here to ask questions and we love your questions. So there will be ways of asking questions. You can either, again, scan the QR code that's on the slide right now. We will be showing this QR code throughout the day, so do not worry. If you lose it, it will be coming back. So that's the place to ask your questions, and we will try to pick them up. If you don't want to do that, you can also send us an email to the email address you see on the screen now. Maybe take your phone, take a picture of this if you're just missing it. It's a slightly complicated email address, but that is the place to shoot your questions to. So one of the two. You can also, in theory, raise your hand, but that's not going to help you because you're not going to be able to speak. So don't do that. We will only be able to take questions via these two forms, so the QR code or via email. And that is really in order to have an as good event as possible for everybody. So that is a little bit of the intro that I wanted to say on the practical stuff. What you can see on this slide is that there is a lot of interesting content coming your way. It's an interesting project we have here. So there's a lot of good presentations in the afternoon ahead of us. But before we really dive into that, I just want to quickly draw your attention to how you can keep up to speed about everything that we do. And that is shown on the screen now. There's different ways to contact us. We have an X and a Blue Sky account. You can also join our LinkedIn group, or you can subscribe to our newsletter with another QR code. I know you're going to say that's a lot of QR codes, but that's the easiest now when you're all viewing us here. So these are the three ways to follow us. And here you can always keep up to speed about what's going on the different project services, whatever it is we do at the ECB together with the Eurosystem. So that's a really good place to keep an eye on us. And this is also where we will be sharing the recordings after this event. So a good place to take note of that. But that's it from my side. And then I just want to wish all of you a great event and hand over to Dimitri, who is our first speaker today. Dimitri is the Deputy Director General in our department, Market Infrastructure and Payments. And I'm delighted to have Dimitri with us today. So Dimitri, over to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, Eileen. I hope you hear me well. Good afternoon and welcome to everyone. And as you said, Eileen, it's Friday afternoon and we are happy to have so many people on board. I'm personally delighted that we have this session now today, not only because of the fact that the previous one was too long ago. The previous one was in July 2025, so quite long ago, but also because of the topic that we want to discuss today. Today, we want to share with you some insights on the latest developments on the work that we do on the tokenized wholesale central bank money. Our last discussion in July last year was on the same topic. And at that time, we conveyed to you the decision from the Governing Council to proceed with the implementation of the strategy to enable the settlement of DLT-based wholesale transactions using central bank money. We also explained the rationale for such decision. And to recall, but I will also try to keep it short, we had conducted extensive exploratory work in the second half of 2024 within the Eurosystem and in close collaboration with the industry. And the work that we had done confirmed that the combination of tokens carrying potentially all the data necessary to operate an asset across its lifespan, the token combined with the ability to deploy smart contracts on DLT-based networks, that this combination has a huge potential in terms of automation, process automation, meaning efficiency gains, but also to act as a catalyst for the delivery of innovative use cases across the lines. We learned also that there is demand. So there is demand for a tokenized form of central bank money to be made available. And many stakeholders consider that this is actually a prerequisite for such ecosystem to develop and to scale. So these are the reasons why the Governing Council took the decision to proceed with our strategy, covering both the short and the longer term. I think it's well established now that we have Pontes covering the short term and Appia for the long term. So these were the messages conveyed during the last summer. And today I'm happy to share with you that a lot of work was done since then. We have established our program organization. The team is in place and we are well advanced towards the delivery of our first product in September this year. The dialogue that we have with the industry is also in place. And yesterday I had the pleasure to attend the third meeting of the Pontes Market Contact Group. We had very concrete discussions on how to approach our initial launch in September. And previously, we were referring to what we call pilot phase. Now, we want to step away from that terminology and we prefer to talk about the initial launch of Pontes. And I was very pleased yesterday to see the quality of the discussion that we have in the Pontes Market Contact Group and also the engagement from the industry. Looking beyond September, our markets infrastructure boards confirmed recently, actually earlier this week, a first batch of enhancements that we want to deliver around mid-year next year. The team has now been tasked to deliver a detailed plan for this first release after go live, meaning around mid-2027. So all in all, we are progressing well and full steam with Pontes, but not only. Today, and maybe we can move to the next slide. Today, we will focus on Pontes, but allow me to say a few words on Appia. So as said earlier, we have one program with two main streams or two pillars, if you like. Appia is the second part of the work program for tokenized wholesale central bank money on DLT platforms. And Appia is the one taking care of the long term. Not surprisingly, Appia is more ambitious than Pontes. So while for Pontes we organize the provision of central bank money in a tokenized form by means of interoperability with market DLTs, the ambition of Appia is to work closely with the markets to develop an entirely innovative and integrated financial market ecosystem, leveraging obviously on tokenization and DLT technology. We had announced previously a launch paper. Here again, we have changed the terminology. This launch paper, now we call it the Appia Roadmap. And the Appia Roadmap will shape the orchestration of our work in the coming 2 years. Actually, I say our work, but I don't know between us and you who will be working more on this, because like for Pontes and probably even more, we plan to deep interactions and contribution from industry stakeholders. And I'm happy to share with you today that the Appia Roadmap was approved by the Governing Council earlier this week. So this is a bit of a breaking news. The roadmap will be published soon, so stay tuned. Eileen, maybe you will forgive me, I hope, for already announcing that we plan to have another focus session around mid-March this year, so in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks' time, to share with you the details of this roadmap. And maybe moving on to the next slide, and before moving to the agenda for the day, let me briefly remind you what are the high-level objectives of the Eurosystem when engaging in this journey. First, our purpose is nothing less than to preserve the whole of central bank money as the safest settlement assets in the field of wholesale finance and in the context of increasing tokenization. Another legitimate objective for the Eurosystem beyond overall efficiency of the financial markets, our other objective is to support, and in this case, even foster innovation. So this is linked to one of our basic tasks of ensuring the smooth functioning of payment systems. The last 2 points on the slide refer to the strategic autonomy and resilience, as well as to the relevance of the euro as an international currency. It would probably bring us too far to develop this today, so I will stick to just mentioning those other objectives. Maybe on other occasion we will develop that further. So moving quickly to the topic of the day, today we want to deep dive into Pontes, and we will do that in 3 steps. The first step is for George Kalogeropoulos. George will give us an overview of the organization of the initial launch in September. Amongst others, he will cover the overall timeline, the eligibility criteria for the market participants and market DLT operators to be part of this initial launch. And George is the person chairing the Pontes Market Contact Group I was mentioning earlier in my introduction. So with him, you are really in good hands. Then we will have Jean Clément, in his capacity as project manager for Pontes. And Jean will walk us through more detailed technical, functional, and operational elements of Pontes. And then as a third element in the presentation today, we will have Bobby Bashford together with Julia and Vitus, so 3 colleagues from the testing team. And they will share with us the testing strategy and also the preparation to connect to the service. And as well, they will share with us more on the relevant documentation before testing opens in July this year. So we have observed that there is a high interest for this session today, although again, it's a Friday afternoon. The team told me that we have around 1,100 participants registered from 46 countries and representing more than 200 institutions. So in order, other participants will also follow this discussion through the live stream on our website. And this high attendance should, however, not prevent you from raising questions. As mentioned earlier, you may have good questions, and we will do our best to reply to those questions throughout the session today. So the last thing I want to share with you now is I hope this session will be fruitful and informative for you. I will be listening in the background, and I will come back at the end of the session for some closing words. But now time for the substance. So back to you, Eileen, and to George. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. No, great to have you on board, and thanks for the overview of the project. It's been indeed a long time since we have spoken to everybody in these focus sessions on this topic. So great just to highlight what's been going on for the past 6 months. As you see on the screen now, we will place these QR codes so you can scan and submit your questions. Do it as the event goes on, and Dimitri will, like he said, be staying with us. So when we have questions for him, we will bring him back in. So I think we can just move straight into the first topic, which is an overview of the Pontes. And for this, we have my colleague George with us. George, let's see if we can bring you on. Yes, there you are. So George is a Deputy Head of Division at the ECB, but he's also the chair of the Market Contact Group. So I'm really happy to have you with us today, George, and would hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. I hope you hear me clear and well. Good afternoon to all. Glad to see that Dimitri can pronounce my surname. It's an impressive task. So indeed, today I want to focus on an update, on an overview of the Pontes initial launch and the roadmap of Pontes, but also perhaps bring some elements of what Dimitri already mentioned as the single program of Pontes and Appia. If we move to the next slide without a lot of introduction, I think this is, you see here, a visualization of what already was introduced. I think the most important element here is the word single program. That's also what we discussed yesterday in the Pontes Market Contact Group. And indeed, what you see in this single, I would say, consolidated timeline, starting with the publication of the Appia roadmap in the coming days. The first priority, I would say, in the Eurosystem is really to go live in Q3 2026 with the Pontes initial launch. I mean, this is what the concentration of our activities is about, and this will start the journey or the process. I want to say a few words about this journey and process. It's very important to understand that it was critical to have a short time to market for the Governing Council, but I would say for Europe in general, to pass the message that central bank money is here to support tokenized assets and the issuance of systemically important tokenized assets. So after we start in Q3 26, we already will start thinking of the enhancements. So what are the elements that can further improve the service to the markets, to you? And we already depict on this slide some priorities and activities that we have put in place after consulting you and after getting your views. The settlement finality or improving settlement finality, let's say the tokenized central bank wallets will be one of the key priorities, and try to extend the timelines and the days that the system will be available to the market. I would say it's another key priority. You see on this slide that in 2027, we already plan to move to these next steps. And this is, I would say, a preamble or introduction to what comes in 2028, which is the Pontes enhanced product. We expect to see more enhancements there. We were discussing yesterday, for example, whether additional programmability features would be available. And I would say after 28, there will be a gradual process for more enhancements. An area which is very sought after and commented by the market is, for example, improving the collateral mobilization of this tokenized asset with the Eurosystem. Perhaps moving to the next slide, where I would like to delve a bit more is what will happen between now and Q3. We are today in the process of completing the specification and the requirements of the Pontes launch product, initial launch product. And very soon, we already are planning connectivity, national central banks testing, and after that, testing the community or user testing in our jargon. I will not go into the details. Bobby and his team are better fit than me to explain that. The key message here is that there will be opportunity to test with Pontes before the go live in Q3 26, end of Q3, let's say. But there will be a gradual approach for testing and onboarding thereafter. So I make this point because we have been approached by many in the market. There's a very strong interest to see how engagement will be established, certifications, authorizations, and configurations. And of course, we support that, but there is opportunity and there's a window for extending onboarding and testing facilities around the go live date. I think this is an important message for today. And in parallel, what you see in the same vein on the lower part is the final, let's say the enhanced Pontes product, where the enhancements I referred to in the previous slides will be in parallel documented, specified, and tested. If we move to the next slide, I think it's an important cluster of our work, and perhaps what is new compared to the July interaction we had together. It's based basically on a governing council decision in December 2025. There was a clarification on the regulatory and eligibility framework for connecting to Pontes, at least on the initial launch of Pontes this year. I would say, if I can summarize this quite heavy textual slide, I would say that there should be no surprises to those of you who were involved in the exploratory phase in 2024. Perhaps there is a better clarification of terminology and better documented. But basically, very briefly, when it comes to market participants, there should be no surprises that the same entities that have access to central bank money through Target and T2 and the relevant Target guideline will also have access to the Pontes system. And perhaps what is more, the new element is the so-called market DLT operators. You can find the definitions on the website. We'll come to that in a minute, where we classify and clarify that CSDs under the CSD regulation, or operators of systems under the pilot regime, future, let's say, revision of the pilot regime, are also in scope. Operators of payment systems that are subject to relevant oversight and competent authorities, of course, central counterparties, and then all other institutions and entities under the Capital Requirements Directive, MiFID, and the relevant national legislations in the EE area. This is the setup for the initial launch. Perhaps what we should clarify is that there may be some, I would say, not surprised, but minor adaptations moving to the enhanced product in 2028, but this should not really surprise anybody. Perhaps it will be more attention to a European DLT pilot regime regulation and how this is applied in our eligibility process. I want to move to the next slide because there is an element connected to that, and a question we very often receive in the interaction with the market is about the legal contractual setup for connecting to Pontes. And it's important to clarify that there will be contractual arrangements between the market participants and market DLT platforms and the national central banks of the jurisdiction. So, of course, in the ECB, we are coordinating the activity, but the decentralization, let's say, of interaction for liquidity provision that credit institutions and other participants experience today with the national central banks will continue. For those of you who were part of the exploratory phase, you should not find any surprises here also on what you'll find in the contractual templates, let's call them like that. And this, we are working on them at the moment. I would say, because this is a key timely question, when the market can receive them, I would say, stay tuned with your national central banks, and this should come on a timely manner before they go live. It should not block your interactions for testing and configuration. And of course, once we have more concrete announcements to make on that, we'll be very, very, very quick to do so. Moving perhaps to the interaction with the market and the communication, and Dimitri touched upon that. Of course, you can use the web-based pages, newsletters, and our social media interaction. The communication team is very active on that. I want to say a few words on the Pontes market contact group. We had the third meeting yesterday. We started in October 2025. I think this is a new element compared to the July interaction. I want to clarify that this is not a closed door group. We are, let's say, obliged in the ECB to follow very clear transparency rules when we engage with the market. And I just want to make sure that there is a clear message here that the communication, the material, the background material that is discussed in this group, it becomes immediately available on the website of the ECB. Actually, we went a step further, Eileen. I think even today we communicate the faces and the images of the participants on social media. So you have full transparency. Who are the people, let's say, are part of this group and are discussing the Pontes project, and you have access to all documentation. Perhaps two additional elements on the Pontes market contact group, also reflecting interactions with some of you in the previous months. We are working on improving the representation in the Pontes market contact group, and we are working in improving also the coordination and the synchronization, I would say, with an additional contact group we have. It had done excellent job during the exploratory phase and in the last months, but we try to see how the two contact groups we are running can be better rationalized in the coming weeks. There will be more information on that once we are ready to announce, I would say, developments in this area. And this is related to also the composition and the participation. I mean, who should be in this contact group? I will be very transparent with you. We didn't know how much appetite would be for this group. We received more than 100 applications to be part of the group. We try to navigate with almost 50 participants, and this is already borderline today. So we always have to strike a balance between right market coverage and efficiency of operation. So there will be a revisit on this composition, and you will be transparently, publicly informed about that. Perhaps we'll move to the next slide, and I think that will be a conclusive element here. It's more about your role and how you should shape the future together with us and advise us, I would say. The first message comes from the communication team to follow, of course, the communication channels. I'm sure Eileen will underline that in the course of the day. I think it's very important to stay engaged in all relevant consultations from the market contact group or groups, but also in close collaboration with the National Central Bank. And this brings me to the third point. Although, again, we coordinate, we are the captain of the ship. Sometimes we are caught in the ECB. It's a Eurosystem teamwork with all national central banks. And I think when it comes to the fine-tuning of your interaction and configuration, make sure you are in the relevant national stakeholders group and you have a close collaboration with the national central bank. I want to conclude in the context of what Dimitri explained on the European objectives. I really want to very warmly invite you to use all these channels, engage with us, and help us to create a common European digital asset ecosystem. I have to say, anchored in the euro currency and the central bank money, and hopefully I would even say even on the currencies of the other central banks that are part of the target services. With that, Eileen, I will pause for your directions and any questions or comments you may have received. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, George. Yeah, so we're already having, okay, so we're just activating you here a bit with a list of acronyms. I would not ask George to go through these, but they are very good for you afterwards. So we'll remember all the presentations and all the recordings will be on the website after, and there you may find them useful. So these are just, you know, us a way to help you. You guys, as always, are very active. So, you know, some of you are even asking questions on what we're about to talk about in a minute. So bear with us. We will be talking more about the use cases and more details on the Pontes in a minute. So that is coming. Do not worry. Also, there was a quick question on the event that Dimitri alluded to at the beginning for mid-March, and yes, indeed, that would then dive more into the Appia roadmap. But again, on this slide, this is the one you really should also take a picture of and save for later to do action on Monday, maybe, in case you don't manage more than this session on a Friday afternoon. But it's a good thing to sign up to the LinkedIn group or subscribe to the newsletter, because here we will be posting about the next event as well, plus, of course, on the recording of this one. So while I just let George breathe for 30 seconds, we just want to show you a bit, because there's actually a few of you asking, how can we contribute? How do we, you know all the information? How do we stay, stay up to date? And what George was saying just a minute ago is that, yes, indeed, we have pages on the website. And on the next slide, you will see that there's a specific place here where we, for all the services projects, whatever it is we run, we upload all the documents so that we are fully transparent on this. And as you can see down at the bottom here, we now also have one for Pontes documents and links. So I would encourage you to go there to stay up to speed about what we publish here. And as you can see here, you can just really filter, search, and filter as you type when, and it comes up. So it's a new feature. So we will be adding more here for Pontes, but that's a good place to start. And then I also just wanted to show you briefly on the next slide how you can stay up to speed on the news and on the events. And that's under the Payments and Financial Stability tab at the top. And then we have the one called Payments, News and Events. And that's the place, save that as one of your favorites, because it's a good place to go if you want to find out what's going on. And on the next slide, you will also see that this will be the place where you can right now watch the live stream if you're not in there already, but it will also be where we will bring the recording and all the presentations live afterwards. So that was just a few of the questions. And then I just want to bring George back, because I think we can briefly discuss a little bit on use cases. Correct, George? So we had a question. Let's make sure everyone knows the question here. So the question is, what's the feedback from the participants so far? Which are the main use cases they're planning to leverage? So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that. Maybe you've had some feedback from the market contact group. George.
Yes, no, indeed. Thank you, Eileen. I also saw some questions on the cash leg. I think the colleagues that coming up after me, they will kind of explain the model even better than me. On the use case, this is a very, very good question. It's about the scope. It's about the interest of the market. And I have to say, initially, in the past, I would say we thought that the key interest comes from some primary issuance of debt instruments, and then we saw some examples of the tokenized assets being moved into, I would say, traditional financial market infrastructures. But we sense and we see from the input from the market, but this has changed a lot. There is an interest for, I would say, the whole life cycle of, I will not refer to securities or tokenized securities, tokenized assets. So primary issuance, secondary market, redemption, corporate actions, coupon payments, and the market actors across the transaction chain are really planning how they can use Pontes, and to our surprise from the start, with a full transaction chain. So I think if I want to speak in technical terms, DVP, PVP, people speak about XVP, that's a new term for me, from my age. They're all part of what we are planning and what, more importantly, the market is planning. So I think that should be enough material as an answer now, Eileen. Now, on the how to participate, I think we covered that. You can say more, Eileen, yourself, but as I said, we are reviewing the contact group and groups, and there will be information and communication on that, how we can find ways to be more encompassing the whole market, but at the same time, as I said, we have to keep efficiency of operations.
Thank you, George. Excellent. We also have some people who want to join. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how could people potentially connect as of July and onwards? Do we have more on this, or is that with the NCBs? What can we give the people here in today's session that want to be part of this?
I think Eileen, probably Bobby and his team can tell us more about the preparations moving to, let's say, the readiness of the market, moving to the July and August testing activity. But I would repeat my message. This is important. Get ready, speak to your national central banks, but there is a window of opportunity beyond the go live. I saw also a question about the exact date. Speaking of the control of Dimitri, we target end of Q3 26, but I hope very soon can be even more precise on the exact date. But the onboarding to Pontes will continue before and after this date. I think this is an important message for today.
All right, excellent, George. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Maybe even if I may, indeed, on the exact launch date. Do you hear me? Sorry, Eileen?
Yeah, we hear you perfectly, Dimitri.
Yeah, on the exact launch date, we can say it will be in September. The precise date, it will come a bit later. So we are teasing you a bit on this, but it will be in September, and that will be communicated at a later point in time. Eileen, if you allow, I would want to come back to a question that was, I think, addressed to me on the terminology that I explained, the notion of initial launch versus pilot phase. Maybe I can say a word on that. I was not clear enough, apparently. When we announced the pilot phase in Q3 this year, we got some questions from the industry asking us, "Oh, it's a pilot, so maybe you would make up your mind later on whether you continue or not." That was a bit a comment that we collected from the industry, with the idea that the pilot could potentially be a kind of a temporary undertaking. And with this change of terminology, we want to make it even clearer that this is not the case. That when we talk about an initial launch of Pontes, it is because we are conscious that this is, well, in marketing terms, people would refer to a minimum viable product. So we will call it a minimum viable product. We call it initial launch And we want also to highlight that the product will evolve over time. I think George already hinted to some enhancements expected already around mid next year, mid 2027. So the change of terminology is really to make sure that everyone understands that this is the start of a story where there will be a step delivery of a product that will be enriched over time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dimitri. Yeah, it was good to clarify this. So we know everyone has the terminology right from the beginning. And George, maybe also one more for you on finality. Do you want to talk a bit about that? There seems to be some questions on this.
Thank you, Eileen. I'm renowned for coining the saying that if you drop finality in a meeting, it goes into all directions. But no, it's a very good question. Perhaps I can clarify a bit more. Today, settlement finality in the Pontes foreseen model in the context of the settlement finality directive, or for those familiar with T2S, or the 3 layers of finality, I will not go to details now. It's the moment where there is defunding, there is liquidity back to target and RTGS. This is the let's say the formal official stamp of settlement finality. Now, this can happen at the end of the day when tokenized wallets will be defunded, but it can happen also during the day on a manual, I would say, interaction of market participants with Pontes. What we want to improve, in 2027, Dimitri mentioned the planned enhancements, is to bring this formal level of finality to the tokenized central bank money wallets or cash. And I don't think this is the day to go into more details, but I think this is a priority for those planning to engage, to issue systemically important assets, to make sure that the regulatory and compliance frameworks are in place. So this is what we plan to do. Bring the finality, extend the finality from today's, I would say, target services to the Pontes tokenized cash central bank money. And we're exploring different ways how to achieve that. I think this should be one of the key considerations in future engagements with the market to update you more on this.
Excellent. Thank you, George. All right, so I think we can let George take a break. I hope he will be staying with us a little bit longer in case we need to bring him back in. But with that, then we are ready for the next part of the program today. And here we will be talking more about the all right, okay, I can't say that word.
What about the technical
aspect of the problem? I hope you, Sean, will be much better able to say that word than me, because otherwise it would be a long afternoon. So Sean, I'm really delighted to have you here with us. You are advisor to the ECB and particularly on this project. So I will hand over to you and let you do the talking. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Eileen. I'm just checking that my audio is working correctly, and we will indeed discuss more into the details. You've heard George about the overall timeline, about the eligibility criteria. So once you tick all the boxes, I'm sure you will be interested to understand what is under the hood. So let's dig directly into the next slide in an overall architecture overview. And I'll benefit from the comments and the answer from my colleagues to make it very clear of where does, let's say, what type of money is situated where. You see that on the left-hand side, we have the traditional target services side, and you see a very important item below. That's where the central bank money is situated. Therefore, the settlement finality of the central bank money will only happen in the RTGS, and I will explain that later. At the core of the tokenized worlds, we have the Eurosystem DLT ecosystem. This is the world of the cash token that we will explain as well. And we need an interface to make the bridge between the traditional target services and the blockchain. That's the T2 interface. And we need another interface to interact with all the markets. And you see as well this extended interoperability interface, which is an API gateway with the outside world. And you see on the outside world, there is a very important statement as well, eligible assets. So explicitly, we remind everyone that the assets are outside the Eurosystem DLT ecosystem for the Pontes initial launch. We have talked about the, let's say, typologies of participants, can be market DLTs, can be market DLT operators, or direct participants. That's what we described before in the eligibility criteria. I'll go even in the next slide a bit deeper in those different components, starting with the heart of, let's say, the tokenized ecosystem, which is the Eurosystem DLT. This is the component that will manage the cash leg of DLT-based transaction. Those of you who are familiar with the different blockchain and the different DLTs will not be surprised that we are using for the Eurosystem DLT a permissioned DLT-based platform, and that those nodes, those blue nodes that you see, they belong to each and every national central banks to ensure a proper consensus mechanism. So that's where basically the cash token will reside during the day and intraday only. I will explain as well later on the operational aspect in the Eurosystem DLT. You'll find two types of wallets in that DLT. The dedicated cash wallets, these are the wallets that will be used directly or indirectly by the market participants for every operation within the DLT. And we have as well to mint, let's say, the cash tokens and transfer the equivalent of the central bank money into the Eurosystem DLT. That's the token issuance wallets entirely managed by the ECB. That's for the heart of the system, the Eurosystem DLT. Now, on the next slide, let's have a look at the functionality around it. We have already communicated in the past that for the initial launch, we have actually two settlements model available in, or let's say, through the Eurosystem DLT ecosystem. We have the settlement in tokenized form. Here it's the traditional way of interacting with this extended interoperability interface via the Eurosystem DLT and achieving later on, let's say, the settlement finality at some point of the day in T2 RTGS. But importantly, you settle cash token on the Eurosystem DLT after having founded the dedicated cash wallet, and you can defound also during the day. So that's, I would say, the traditional tokenized form. We have also another settlement model which offer a direct settlement in T2 RTGS. So here, the dedicated cash accounts would be, let's say, founded or defounded, triggered via the Eurosystem DLT, but without the intermediate step of the settlement of the cash token. So it passes through, it's triggered by the Eurosystem DLT, but here directly you go doing, let's say, the netting pluses and minuses in the dedicated cash accounts in the RTGS. So keep in mind for the initial launch, we offer a dual settlement model. You see a small mark that you will find on the lower left corner that if you need additional information on T2, similar to my colleagues, I will repeat that you will find many information already on the ECB website. So you can keep yourself informed, not only on Pontes, but also on the existing target services on the ECB website. Many public information available here. When you need more technical or contractual detail, your contact is your national central bank. That parenthesis being made, I will continue on the next slide discussing about the model for the initial launch. Very important, we have to repeat, that's a follow-up on the answer provided by my colleague George as well, settlement finality. The settlement finality in central bank money, if you recall my graph, the central bank money is in RTGS. So the settlement finality is only achieved in T2 RTGS. What does it mean concretely? The euro cash leg, so settlement of a euro central bank money financial transaction using Pontes can occur in RTGS in two ways. With the cash tokens, you remember the direct settlement model and the cash token settlement model. So if you are using the blockchain and want to make use of the cash token, you can use the defunding mechanism directly, or a market participant can ask for a defunding that will do the inverse mechanism from the defunding, reverting back to the RTGS DCA, and achieve settlement finality in central bank money in RTGS at that moment in time. If you don't do it yourself or manually during the day or during the open hours of the settlement window, anyway, at the end of the business day, there will be an automatic, let's say, cash sweep to repatriate or to transfer the equivalent of the cash token back into RTGS DCA. That's mandatory to align with the central bank money finality and all the other target services. If you are using the second settlement model, which is directly in RTGS, then you don't have that issue or that, let's say, intermediary step, because you have already modified the balances of the RTGS DTA in T2, so you don't need this additional step. You will have achieved the settlement finality at the end of your transaction. Remember as well that the asset, the green statement that I made, is outside of the ecosystem. So the settlement finality of the asset leg actually will be dependent on the rules that are applicable to the market DLT operator, not directly on the rules of the Eurosystem DLT ecosystem. Let's continue further on exploring the model. We talked about the participation, the overall architecture, how do I achieve settlement finality, but how does it work concretely? Concretely, you will interact only with this extended interoperability interface, so the EII API gateway. The rest is automated. So we have an end-to-end automated processing of transaction. You don't have to do anything else on the system. In case of a contingency, we will have the manual operation procedures to cater for, let's say, missing information. But once you have sent your information to the EII component, the rest is fully automated. So you see the T2 interface will support an automated processing using the existing functionalities of T2, by the way, and that's requiring minimal effort on your side during the registration process. So we can set up your static data in our centralized repository of static data, which is the CRDM common component. Let's continue exploring further. So we discussed about the process, about the settlement finality. We explained that there is an end-to-end process. If we go to the next slide, we will rely, let's say, I mentioned, how we use the T2 functionality for the T2 interface, how the cash tokens are used. Let's discuss as well on what is in this inside this EII extended interoperability interface component. If you have a look at the trials and experiments, you will find that we were already using the hashlink protocol. So basically, that protocol requires an all or nothing settlement. That's the protocol that we will implement for all transactions using the Eurosystem DLT ecosystem. That allows us to have a clear delineation of responsibility between the Eurosystem and the market DLT operator as well. There are some mechanisms by where we can see exactly the different steps of the process and a clear delineation. The advantage as well is that it does not require specific technical requirements from the market DLT platform, so outside of the ecosystem, except one capability which is very important for the hashlink protocol, which is the conditional lock. It's not today, we will not enter into the technical detail, but that's already provide you an idea on how the hashlink protocol works and the capability that are required. Actually, this capability acts, as it is mentioned, as an escrow, but for the assets. So it's not an escrow account, but it's an escrow for the assets, depending on some secret keys. That's about it. I explained the different steps of the model. For which use cases? So we started already discussing, that was one of your questions on the market, which use cases are implemented. I'll come back on the next slide as well to remind the use cases which are covered during the initial launch. So you see on the next slide that we are moving, I missed one slide, sorry for that. In the initial launch, two ways of interacting via this EII possibility. You have the traditional graphical user interface, or namely the user to application. So several activities or transaction possibilities via the GUI, the graphical user interface. You will find as well very soon on the web page the detail of the functionality accessible via the U2A, and as well the traditional application to application, so machine to machine, application to application, software to software, via API, and as well on the ECB website, we will very soon publish the specification of those two interfaces. Last but not least, I was too fast. On the use cases, this time on the next slide is a reminder of the main use cases that are, the three, use cases that are available at the Pontes initial launch. TVP, we want to have all the transaction on primary, secondary markets as well. PVP, so you see the direction of the Euro Central Bank money versus commercial bank money. This is where the exchange will be happening, or versus electronic money as well, providing the compliance and conformance with the eligibility criteria. We talked a bit about the wholesale payments. This is where we will manage all the life cycle of the asset, issuance, redemption, coupons, payments, etc. So these are the three use cases you have to keep in mind that you will be able to trigger in the tokenized central bank money platform. I talked about a high-level architecture. Let's go a bit more into the detail. And here it's a very simplified graph, but to show exactly what I meant when I discussed about the RTGS DCAs, where you see that we have some technical accounts to make a distinction between a participant RTGS DCA and the token issuance accounts. That's more technical, but again, all this information will be available in great detail on the ECB website. You see a very high representation of the Eurosystem DLT to explain mostly that the token issuance one, and so the minting action is interacting with the NCB related accounts. So each one of the participants has traditionally with the target services to register and contact the local national central bank to get access to a dedicated cash wallet. All the interaction, as mentioned, go through this extended interoperability interface. I will not go into more technical details. To summarize, where will you find all this information? On the next slide, I remind that we have two main documentation for the initial launch. You will find a business description document, which is an introduction of the functionalities, rather high level, overview of the solution, operation purposes, functionalities and objective, and the more detailed version, which will come into the service description soon available, which will detail the technical, let's say, implementation, the functional flows and scenario in far more detail that I went through today. Also the API documentation, also the processes. So here we are still targeting to publish that service description document in Q2, if I'm not mistaken. I will not be precise right now, but we can provide more details later on. That will be the two main documents to look for. I talk about the technical and functional details. We said at the start that we will discuss as well about the operational details. So on the next slides, we start exploring the operational framework. When does it work? How does it work with the other target services? So the initial launch has opening hour, a settlement, let's say, opening hours, which is slightly reduced compared to the other target services. However, we will be operating the platform 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. It is closed on Saturday and Sunday, and it is also closed during the usual ECB public holidays. So we will follow the T2 Euro public holidays, which are reminded below. For the operating hour, let's keep in mind N2-4, so 8 to 16, and I'm coming to the detail right after. So 8 to 16, what does it mean? Let's switch to the next slide to go exactly what will happen in the platform. At the start of the day at 8 o'clock, this is where you can start preparing for the day. We are still based on a pre-funded mechanism. So during that period, this would be a good idea to prepare for the business day and to do the funding and or defending of the cash wallets. Because once we open at 9, this is where the start of the DLT and the RTGS settlement window starts. And at 1600, this is where we will end the settlement window of the DLT platform to allow between 1600 and 1800 a proper reconciliation with the other target services. You remember, we have to align because the settlement finality on the central bank money only happened on the RTGS, so we have to have that window to reconcile during the end of day process between the blockchain and the other target services. So that's why I mentioned that the window that you should keep in mind is 8 to 1600. During the night, 1800 until 8 o'clock, only operator can perform any activity, and this is also the period which is reserved for maintenance window. So no user activity possible at all after 1800. There is some dedicated placeholder to find operational information. Thank you very much. On the next slide. We have already an ECB page on the ECB website, which summarizes the operational status of all the target services. You will find as well some operational status for the Pontes initial launch as of the go-live date on that page. So you can already today bookmark that page on the ECB website. It will also contain the information for the initial launch of Pontes. There will be some dedicated documentation on the next slide. We recall that there will be an operational framework. It's only shared with, let's say, the participant central bank. The information guide has some sensitive information. It's such restricted. However, due to the explicit request of the participating central bank, there will be some exception, and some part of the info guide will also contain some relevant information for the participants of the Pontes initial launch. Here as well, you see, as usual, a reference to our ECB website where you will find all the information. And Eileen, I can come back to you because this marks the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Sean. And I'm really happy that you were able to speak much clearer than me. So it was very good. So thank you so much. There is also some annex here. We're not going to go through the annex, but the annex will be published as well. So all of you will have the opportunity to deep dive even more into this topic after. But maybe we could just quickly, before we dive into the next topic, which is on testing, I just want to maybe hold a second before I let you go, Sean. I think you did clarify this during your presentation, but there was a question about the previous work we did. Let me find it here. So the exploratory work we did before that Dimitri also mentioned at the beginning, and that there were many solutions here, and how these solutions have inspired us for the current work. So maybe what you want to talk about that.
That's a great question indeed. So if you remember the graph where I showed the main components or the three components of the tokenized ecosystem, we have actually reused or learned from those trial and experiments, and we are reusing parts or all of those components to bundle this ecosystem. So the T2 interface is largely inspired by the Trigger backend solution. The Eurosystem DLT is largely inspired by the DL3S, and the EII, the Extended Operability Interface, is largely inspired by the Ashlink. So we are using, of course, and reusing a large part of, let's say, what we have learned during the trials and experiments.
Very good. Thank you, Sean. Then we also have some questions, but we can't answer them yet. But I think we have, that will come in, I think, in the service description but let me raise them to you. So there's some question on clarifying the standard, whether a standard is evaluated to exchange communication among the pilot and the market DLT operator. But I believe these are some of the things that will come later, but maybe you want to say something on that.
Sure, I'll try not to be too technical, but indeed, the interaction with the EII is based for the specialists out there on HTTP REST API, so not necessarily a blockchain standard as you can imagine. This will come as well later. This is part of the enhancements that are foreseen that we will put in the pipeline. But currently, when we talk about an API, we talk about an HTTP REST API platform.
Excellent, Sean. Thank you so much. So I think with that, we can move on to the last part of it. We still have questions coming in. We're going to keep monitoring these and see where they fit. And, you know, unless they're picked up by someone else, we will be bringing colleagues back here. A lot of the things you're asking, it's great to see, as always, that you're very engaged on this. So thanks for all the questions. But now I want to move to the last part here of the more technical presentations of today. Now we're going to speak to the colleagues on the testing strategy. So I want to bring in my colleagues, Bobby, Vitus, and Julia. So there you are. Great to have you on board, and you know, give the floor to you to talk us through the testing strategy.
Perfect, Ellen. Thanks a lot. Can you hear us okay?
Perfectly. Thank you, Bobby.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 11th floor of the ECB. My name is Bobby Bashford. I am the head of testing. I also look at the financial topics, and also and the communications for the team, who are doing a very good job right now in broadcasting and presenting this focus session. With me here is Vitas Rossman. He is an expert here, and he will be the lead man, if you like, on the Pontes testing for the next period. And then I also have beside me Julia Lola, who is our secondee and another very good example of the collaboration within the Eurosystem. Julia has joined us from the Bundesbank. So we could move maybe to the slides. I will look at the agenda, and then Julia will follow me, and then Vitas will also present. So we will, first of all, we will speak to you about our testing in Eurosystem projects, because we have a methodology. We have been very, very successful through the years in launching quite a few target services, and we use this methodology, but we tailor it to the next products, to these new technologies. Particularly now, we will tailor our methodology to Pontes, and Julia will show you how we do that. We will go a little bit deeper. George already showed you the timeline. We will go a little bit more granular. We will discuss it. We have also some deliverables from the testing team. We have published one today. Julia will speak about that. We will speak about the status of other deliverables. We will speak about the first the first part of our testing in the Eurosystem, the acceptance testing. We're preparing for that now. What does it mean? And then we will speak about your participation, those of you as market DLT operators, those of you as market participants who will come and test this product. We will outline that with you. So I think that's it from me. Julia, I will give you the floor. We will move to the next slide.
Yes, thank you, Bobby, and welcome also from my side. So as said, we will just give you a short introduction on what testing in Eurosystem projects normally looks like. It is defined by several testing stages, which have different actors per stage. So the first stage is the internal acceptance testing. All these stages you will find later on in the timeline we will come to. So we've got the internal acceptance testing, which is conducted by the service provider, and then which is followed by the Eurosystem acceptance testing. So this is what we are currently looking at. We are very close to. Then follows the central bank community test, the central bank testing conducted by the national central banks, and followed as the last stage and the most one of the very important one, of course, the user testing. In general, we've got overlapping phases, but they are conducted on different test environments. Normally there are two, or at least three. If you consider that the internal acceptance testing by the service provider is run on a separated test environment, internal test environment, and then the EAT and the CBT testing takes place on one dedicated test environment with overlaps, and user testing is taking place on a different test environment. Now, going to the next slide, we try to outline a bit on where we are with Pontes, the initial launch, where we had to, as Bobby said earlier, streamline a bit due to the very short time to market, and the time period had really need to be condensed together. So we've got still the same actors. You see on the left-hand side, we've got still the service provider doing the EAT test and IAT testing. We've got followed by the ECB testing team and central bank and user testing team. We have one internal test environment for the service providers, and all other stakeholders and testing stages will take place in one single test environment. So we are sharing. But EAT testing will start a bit and then followed very shortly by the central banks and by the users. which in the end means that in summer we have all three stages are in one test environment active and need to align and make sure that they don't block themselves.
So maybe, Julia, just one thing from my side. What's very important here for everyone to know is that each of these give a next level of quality assurance. Yeah, so the fact that we have the EAT testing, then we move to the central bank testing, means that by the time the users receive the product, there will already have been the internal acceptance testing by the provider in the other environment. There will have been Eurosystem acceptance testing in this environment. There will have been central bank testing in this environment. So the level of the quality of the system will have improved. And for this reason, it should be for the users in a sufficient level, a good high level of quality to be able to test this product. So this is what this is the strategy here, if you like. Yeah. And because we're in this environment, we will now speak about the how we work together within this environment.
Okay, if you go to the next slide, please. Here we have a deeper dive into what we plan for testing for the initial launch in September this year. So service providers are currently testing in their environment, which is to be finished before handing over the test environment to the EAT. So the ECB testing team. ECB will start with first connectivity tests mid-April, and we hope to be finished with these latest by mid-May. So this will mark the begin of the functional testing for the ECB team, which will be continued until end of August. And then stopped, and we will then provide in between, of course, and we will provide at the end a report on how our testing went. Then the next phase, it's where the central banks kick in. They will start only 2 weeks after ECB team started functional testing. So this is what I meant when we were speaking on a condensed timeline. So there are only very short periods before the next actor kicks in. We've got the central bank's same methodology. So we've got a connectivity phase followed then by a functional testing phase until mid-September. And same applies also then for the user testing, where market participants, market DLT operators can start with their testing activities, connecting beginning of July and starting testing beginning of August. Yes, that's it on the timeline.
So maybe then we had some questions in the chat, Julia. There was the discussion about someone who was coming late. They wanted to know, were we closing or would we reopen? So just to reassure everybody that it stays open the whole way. There will be when you're coming to join, there will no more be calls for expressions of interest. You should contact your NCB. And then, Julia, if you remember yesterday in the market contact group, there was some discussion about, was the 1st of July the first day you could do connectivity? Was the 1st of August the very first day you could test?
Yes. As of if you really want to start earlier, it's key to get in contact with your national central bank, check with them, because it's mandatory that they have performed their testing before admitting their users. So this is the plan as you see now, which we have established. Get in contact with your national central bank and come to us, and we can discuss. Probably also just to this planning was established for all those who want to be part of the go live end of September. but it doesn't mean that you have to be part of the go live. If you don't make it, there's no problem to start testing at a later point in time and to onboard at a later point in time to this Pontes initial launch product.
Exactly, and to go and even to maybe start testing at the beginning, but not to go live on the first go live date. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah.
Okay, then we can go to the next slide, I believe. Here is just to describe you a bit what we are doing in the Eurosystem acceptance testing. So it is started once the service provider has successfully concluded his testing or their testing. The EAT testing is based on the business description document and the corresponding service description. We are, as an ECB team, testing as a user of Eurosystem provided infrastructure. We are sharing, as said earlier, one single test environment, sharing after a couple of weeks with all of you. And the EAT team then recommends the start of the following testing for the central banks and, of course, also for the users. And will also provide the input to the ECB Market Infrastructure Board go live decision for the Pontes initial launch. And of course, we will set up regular reporting also on the EAT testing and report to the Pontes working group and the market contact group, which has already been mentioned earlier several times. Then if we go to the next slide, you will see what is happening on central bank side. So first thing is that if central banks would like to be part of this Pontes initial launch, they will own a node and with market participants and market DLT operators. So central banks need to connect if they want to participate. Starts after this very first successful conclusion of the first EAT phase, and the central banks confirm that the goal of the testing is to confirm that the Pontes initial launch product is interacting with T2 RTGS as planned, and provides also assurance on the end-to-end consistency of the business processes and operational procedures. And the NCB then allows for the start of its participants. So market participants and market DLT operators are admitted through their dedicated respective national central banks. And the ECB team will consolidate the NCB testing feedback to regular report to the dedicated groups. Next slide. Then the user testing starts after the green light of the relevant NCBs. The registration process needs to be finalized, and of course, connectivity and reference data setup needs to be concluded for the test environment. User testing results will be reported to the ECB MIB as part of their go-no-go decision, go-no-go live decision. And the testing will provide then assurance also on the end-to-end consistency of processes and procedures. And the user relationships, so everything which is submission, collection, validation, archiving of test results are managed at the NCB level, at the NCB owning the node. And again, the ECB team consolidates all feedbacks provided to have a consolidated view on what's going on in the product and in the testing process. Okay, then for the next slide, we will have, or we have already, we just published this morning on the ECB website the testing and onboarding strategy, which is reflecting the approach we are taking for new services and for new products. And it gives an overview on the stakeholders involved on the different testing phases, as we already presented on the earlier slides. Entry criteria and which approach we're taking and what the onboarding strategy would look like, and also provide an idea on the client readiness monitoring we will conduct. If you go to the next slide, Then the testing terms of reference complements the testing strategy, so gives a deeper dive in what we are doing in testing. So it outlines the principles for preparation, organization, and execution for all testing phases. It aims at covering the communication flow. As said earlier, market participant and market DLT operators need to address their requests to their national central bank service desks, and who then will contact the service provider service desk in case of need, which is basically the same process as applied in the target services as well. It's valid for all 3 testing stages, so EAT, CBT, and UT. The test environment we're working with is connected to T2U test to have to make the funding and defunding process work and testable. And as said already, the different actors on the stages are then described a bit more in detail. And we will have also operational testing aspects covered. And this document is currently under Eurosystem review, and we will publish it late May, early June.
Perfect, Julia. So again, just to be clear, because we are working these 3 testing phases within the one environment, this is a vital document here to how we will all be able to operate together. We will make sure that everyone can work in parallel and that there will be no issues. And this document is a framework for this. So it will be coming before the beginning of June. And in the meantime, of course, there is the previous document for you to look at, the testing strategy document, to give you more information. So great. Thank you very much, Julia.
So then I guess next slide is for Vitus, right?
Yes, exactly. Good afternoon also from my side. So you've heard a lot now about the general testing approach, and I think as you've seen, especially in this project, also due to the condensed timeline, I think the Eurosystem acceptance testing is a pretty critical element. So we want to share today with you a bit of the information that we have gathered during our preparations for exactly that testing phase. And we think that might also help you when you prepare, in case you're interested in participating, when you prepare for your testing campaign. So based on the 2 documents that I mentioned here, actually, so the business description document, which is the document, again, that reflects kind of the market view on the Pontes initial launch, and the service description, which is more on the functional side. We have derived various clusters and also 4 domains based on which we have allocated several test cases that we have come up with. And our aim is with those test cases within the EAT phase to basically test all the functionalities provided by the software, by the service. And what it means in practice is that we will also set up mock entities basically for all the different actors that are involved, and mock all the flows that will be available, to make sure that the quality of the product is on a sufficient level before we actually move on to the next testing phase, which will then be the central bank testing, as you've heard. Which will provide another layer of quality assurance before we start actually with the user testing phase. So basically you, the users, will be allowed to the platform. One of the important elements, and I think this is the second bullet point that you can see on the slide, is actually the connectivity. So as I've mentioned, we are setting up, or we intend to set up mock entities for our testing. This obviously also includes the preparing of the connection and the reference data. Given that we at the ECB are used to testing within target services, while now the initial launch of Pontes will also imply or entail actually the connection to API endpoints requires quite some new setup on our side. So we are working on setting up the tooling and the network to allow our testing setup to interact with these API endpoints, and still to reach also target services on the other side. So this requires quite some effort.
Maybe Vitas, you were speaking about the mock. There was a question about the mock entities. There was this question about how EAT and CBT can take place without the market DLTs on board. So we will mimic them.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is what we intend to do. So even though obviously we are not a market DLT operator, we try to set or configure our testing suite in a way that we can mock also those actors, and again provide 3D for the full set of functionalities, a sufficient layer of quality before we onboard the users to the platform.
But then, Julia, I believe that when CBT starts, it could be that some of the market DLTs might be able to come earlier with their NCB.
This is depending on the progress of the NCB testing. Yeah. So if NCBs are early and they are fine with their testing, this is I believe, and we deem the system ready, we could discuss this.
Okay, let's see. Okay, great.
Yeah. So if we then move on to the next and final slide from our side. So the next one actually, so here, if you stay for a second, so here you can see the functional clusters covered and the 4 domains that I've mentioned, but I don't want to dive now that much into the topic, but for your reference, and as I said, also when you prepare for your testing, this might be helpful.
And maybe Vitas, just from my side, we have the clusters are there, that's completely fine. But previously in the annex to John's presentation, there was the use cases.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the idea is really with those clusters to cover all the use cases that are possible and described within that document. So
cover them with our test cases.
Exactly, yes, our test cases, yeah. Okay, so. And then if you move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So in general, I mean, we hope that not only our presentation today, but in general, the overall focus session today has raised your interest in participating, obviously, in the initial launch of Pontes. Testing is a major prerequisite for this. So we want to also iterate here again that your national central bank is the relevant point of contact. So we will not launch again a call for interest or something like this, but if you're interested, please contact your national central bank, who will support you in the whole registration requirements process, inform you about the timeline, and any additional questions you might have, you can also shoot out to your NCB. We have recently conducted a survey within the Eurosystem, and based on the outcome, we know that the indicative participation planned is so far that we have 14 NCBs participating. 5 of them are interested in participating in initial launch, even though they don't have any participants signed up yet. We have 31 market participants that are interested in participating, and we have 13 market DLT operators. And then one final item, because it always comes up again. So as you know, or some of you might know from target services, we usually have mandatory certification test cases that need to be passed successfully before you are allowed to move from the user testing environment to the production environment. And we are currently discussing within the Eurosystem how these will look like. And we intend to have final approval on that set of certification test cases by end of March 2026. And then for further information on this, please also get in touch with the NCB, who will perform such certification with you and also provide you with any further information that you require.
Great. Then maybe just one more thing for me. There was also a question about the NCBs who have a node, and the vast percentage of NCBs will have a node. So this is completely clear. And also, there was a very good question, which lessons learned from the T2 and ECMS projects were reused for the planning of the Pontes project? So what's very important is that we have a methodology. We've spoken about this. We refine it after every single project. the T2 closure report led to improvements for the ECMS. The ECMS closure report now also brings the lessons learned that we will be using in this. But as I said, we tailor it to the project itself. So this is a new technology, so we will tailor our methodology to this technology. Yeah, but of course, all lessons learned from our previous projects have been taken on board. Thank you, Ellen. I think we're.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, all three of you. This was really great. Lots of information there. Just want to bring we're running out of time. We could continue going, I'm sure. There's lots of, interest on this topic. I just want to say again, quickly, the slides and the recording will be published. So let's make that crystal clear. It will come on the website, so you can all view it there. And then I just want to maybe say thanks to the testing colleagues. You covered a lot of ground here. We've had a few questions coming back. So if George is still there, I wouldn't mind bringing George back with me.
Yes, Eileen.
Excellent, thank
following
you.
your orders.
Excellent, thanks, George. We have a few questions, maybe, so we are running out of time, but maybe briefly, there's one on, do you think that using operation by operation settlement, the liquidity needs will increase? So there's clearly some concern about liquidity. Can you talk about that a little bit, George, please?
Yes. Thank you, Eileen. I think I would call this a valid and a deep question. I would say it goes a bit wider than the core project, I would say, activities. You can see it also from overseer, stability, even monetary policy perspective. So it's clear that DLT and tokenization brings operational efficiency. I think speaking to this audience, I don't need to prove that. And it supports the so-called atomic settlement and atomicity. At the same time, going, let's say, back to pure cross RTGS gross settlement, transaction by transaction, has its own liquidity, I would say, impact, especially if one considers and expects that this is scaling to a systemic, I would say, presence. So it's a valid question. We have registered that very clearly in our activity. We have to see how we can bring, on the one hand, I would say, aspects and liquidity management tools we have in our central liquidity management in target services. That's one way to approach this. There are ideas that programmability can help facilitate, let's say, the liquidity management, so that these are two different ends of finding solutions. But at this stage, I can only say that this is clearly in our radar. It's part of our activities. But as I said, it may require a little bit of wider analysis with our internal stakeholders.
Thank you, George. And now when we're at the wider, we also recently published another press release about DLT-based assets as eligible Eurosystem collateral. And there's a question on this. So maybe you want to just briefly talk about that as we close up.
No, indeed, Eileen, this is another big topic, and we know the interest of the market. You want to issue tokenized assets, and of course, breaking the tag of eligibility for monetary policy has certain, I would say, even economic business repercussions for issuers, for investors. Yeah, this is also, I would say, a focused area of work internally in the Eurosystem. Indeed, there was a recent announcement where we explain, we take a kind of stepped approach. So what we say is that we have opened up our framework of monetary policy collateral mobilization to the extent that assets, tokenized assets, native one as well, that are issued in CSDs, Central Securities Depositories, under the CSDR, can follow the, I would say, traditional way of collateral mobilization in Eurosystem through the target to securities, the Eurosystem collateral management system. We know that this is only a first step, may not be the final phase. And we are looking into expanding potentially the framework. But this is a rule-based framework that in order to adapt, you have to have wider risk management and policy implications and discussions. And this is what we're doing in the Eurosystem. I don't want to promise too much in terms of solutions, but we are looking into how could, let's say, the same tokenized assets issued potentially beyond CSDs, I don't know, under the relevant European regulation, could be considered. That's one step to go. And another step potentially in the medium long term is to see how a more direct, efficient interaction between our incumbent existing target services and the new DLT platforms can be established. So it's the start of a journey. I think it's opening up and show some agility for the Eurosystem, but we have to take a structured and stepped approach on this one.
Thank you, George. So I think we'll have to close up the questions for now. We are running out of time, and I just want to bring back Dimitri just as our closing few words here as we close. Dimitri, there you are, you're with me. So over to you, Dimitri.
Yes, thank you, Eline. And it's always a tough job to close a session, a focus session, and this one is no exception. So today we wanted to exchange with you very concrete information about Pontes, and I hope that you found this exchange useful. Again, over the last month, we have progressed a lot, and we are now well underway to deliver our first product of Pontes in September. We disclose as well that there will be enhancements already mid-2027. So it's, what we deliver in September is only the start of a longer journey. George explained to us the high-level timeline for Pontes, and he also brought the eligibility criteria and the contractual setup. He also spent a bit of time explaining the Pontes market contact group and what we discussed there and how we proceed. But he also explained that this is not a closed, and what did you say? Not behind closed doors. So there is everything that is discussed there is shared publicly, and there is also more information available on our website. Then we continued with Jean, who gave us a functional overview of Pontes and with a focus, I guess, on the settlement logic and the settlement finality. Maybe there was a question here on the dual settlement model. The reason why we have two settlement models, it was mainly a request from the industry. So over time, we want to go back to one settlement logic, and that would be settlements using the tokens directly on the DLT. But as an intermediary step, we decided to have two settlement models, but this is not meant to stay like that over time. Well, Jean reminded us as well that there is a lot of function documentation, so the business description document and the service description available on the website again. We covered briefly the operational framework that will be in place after the launch in September. And maybe one point here on the opening hours. Jean explained, I think, well, the opening hours. Be aware that this is an item that we aim at improving, and the gameplay here is that we want to proceed in two steps, so there will be an improvement already next year, and then the following step would be going towards 24/7, and that's really an element of essence when we talk about DLT technology. Then we spent time with Bobby, Julia, and Vitus. Thank you for stepping in for the testing. They explained the various stages for the testing strategy as well as the onboarding process, and they shared with us the terms of reference for testing. Maybe I would like to bring one question. One point that came quite recurringly in the chat, and that was, how can I join and how can I contribute? And I think, by the way, we are very pleased with those questions because it shows that there is quite an interest in what we do here. I think the best answer here is twofold. One, if it's really to act as a stakeholder, for the onboarding to the platform, the best message is the one that I don't recall if it was Bobby, Julia, or Vitus that was brought there, that you should reach out to your national central bank and they would guide you through the process. So that's probably the most convenient way of getting involved into the process. What I want to share with you as well is that when we progress with the roadmap for Appia, we will for sure revisit the composition of the contact group, and that would be another occasion for you to join or to be maybe more active into the setup. But that was a question I felt was useful to clarify. So from my perspective, this is it more or less for the focus session today. As mentioned at the beginning, we are about to issue the roadmap for Appia. This is going to be released in the coming days. And as mentioned already, we will have a dedicated focus session on this roadmap around mid-March. And with that, I think I'm more or less done. I hope again that this was useful for you. I don't know how it is on your side. Here in Frankfurt, it's quite sunny outside, and therefore I wish you a good rest of the day and a good weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dimitri. Exactly. We just want to say goodbye and thanks everybody. Please give us your feedback by filling in this short questionnaire. It will take you 30 seconds. Scan the QR code. If you do this, it's much easier for us to tailor the session so they fit your needs the best. And thanks for all of us. It was great to have you on board last Friday of February, so start of the spring. So thanks to everyone and have a lovely weekend. Thank you and bye-bye.